and I'll use, I guess, myself as an example, but I didn't always journal. I didn't always read. I didn't always go on a barefoot walk in the morning. I didn't always get in the cold plunger, start my day off with 3 minutes of ice cold showers. I didn't always do all of these things, right? I tested them. I would test them one at a time. Not everything that I have tried has stuck. What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to another episode of The Morning Takeaway. As I sit here and say that, I kind of realize, like, I say that exact same thing every time I start a podcast. And I guess that's just kind of my thing and habit, but whatever. I don't even really know why I'm talking about it. I just felt like so repetitive, but I guess that's how we progress in life, is by repetition. But that is not the point of today's podcast. Today's podcast is gonna reflect on just a little random weird scenario that I had pop up in my head this week, and I kind of drew a similarity and a comparison to the scenario in my head to identity and who we want to become in life and how we figure that out. And I don't think there's a one size fits all type of answer to that question, because it's ever changing, right? And who we are or who we want to be or who we're gonna become, it's based on a lot of circumstances. And I can sit here and talk, you know, motivation, perspective, accountability, discipline, all this stuff, and it matters, and it all compiles, and the compound effect is something so real. But in the grand scheme of things, there are external factors and circumstances that do play into account, right? So I want you to keep that in mind as I go through this little scenario. I don't even know if it's a scenario, it's just a comparison, and hopefully something we can all relate to. But with that said, before we jump into it, I'm just kind of like, I'm now realizing I'm almost 50 episodes into this podcast, and I love it. I love getting on this camera and just really, I'm talking to you, but I'm just having a conversation with myself in a way and getting my thoughts out. And if you followed me for a long time, you know that one of the main reasons that I started this was because if somebody could get on a camera and a microphone and change my life and have an impact on me literally through YouTube doing the same thing that I'm doing right now, then if I can give that back to somebody else and maybe that trickle down and the compound effect take place, then I'm fulfilled. And I truly, truly enjoy this. I love making the vlogs and the workouts just as much, but there's something about just the vulnerability aspect of talking about life and real life stuff that people connect to. And I think that's a key in our life. I've said it before, but the first book that I write is going to be on vulnerability and how it relates to our connection as people. But with that said, I want to ask, and if you are still with me 2 or 3 minutes into this video, I want to ask you what your thoughts are on bringing people onto the podcast. I'm thinking about having some really well-versed people in the nutrition side of life, just like entrepreneurial outlooks, just all kinds of different perspectives, and also just having my best friend Mitchell on here and us sitting here talking life. He's a very philosophical person. We bond on that level pretty hardcore, and the big goal one day is to have a studio and have everybody come in there. But me and Mitch could just hook up the microphone, sit on the couch, chill with Juju, and talk life. But just wanted to hear your thoughts. If you are willing to comment and let me know, I would appreciate it, and I'll get back to you. So without further ado, let's get into this episode after you've liked, commented, and subscribed. All right, that's enough of that, Nicholas. So I want to talk about identity, and I am a huge believer in the idea that our values, our beliefs, our values, our rituals, our routines, and our disciplines, they're all kind of interconnected. They're all kind of the same thing in a way, but they hold us to a standard. And our standards is what drives us to carry out those things to our highest level of performance, effort, and ultimately the outcome, right? And that outcome is our standard. It's something we hold ourselves to. And if you consistently hold yourself to the standard, you raise the standard, and then you keep striving for that next standard, that's ultimately creating your identity, right? And Tony Robbins talks about this a lot, and it's something that really hits home. But I got to thinking the other day, I'm like, well, how do you get there? Like, I kind of feel like I know that I'm there in a way. I know what my identity is in the sense of who I am as a person at the core and the soul of my being, but how did I get there? And I started breaking it down, and I started thinking, do you remember when you were a kid and elementary school? I can vividly remember, and this is the whole little scenario that I was talking about. I don't even know. It's just a comparison. I don't know. Keep tripping over that. But do you remember when you were in elementary school and you would get a new pair of shorts, or you saw everybody wearing the high Nike socks? This was just my own experience. Or like the high Nike socks with the Sperry's, or the longer shorts. And of course now the trend is the shorter shorts. But you saw all of this happening around you, and then you'd go get one, and it was the coolest thing ever, right? I finally got my long pair of Nike socks, and I'm gonna wear them. But deep down inside, like when I reflect on it, there was an intimidation factor of that. Like, oh, am I gonna look the same as what I see everybody else, right? And this is the human nature of being a kid, and before our brain is fully developed, right? Like I get on this camera and talk about comparison and everything, and that's exactly what we do as kids. And ultimately, when you have that piece that was like, should I? Like you finally get these socks and you're like, okay, now do I wear them? Oh my gosh. There's a little nervousness to put those socks on, or whatever the trend was to fit in, or have your Beyblade was one of the things, or like your Pokemon, like, do I bring those? Am I cool enough? Whatever the case might be, but it took a certain level of confidence to finally go outside and test it, right? And we all go through these phases in life, and trust me, we've all had our phases. I used to spend 8 hours a day on video games, and I loved it. And that was a little phase. I would go to baseball, I would do my workouts. I was in high school and middle school, and then I would come back and I would just put my life in video games. And that was a phase, right? But that's a little different from what I'm talking about here. But these phases, you test them out, and then maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you move on to the next thing and like go through the whole cycle, right? It's this constant ongoing process of test, retest, and see what sticks. And maybe today you still wear those high Nike socks or those long shorts or whatever the trend was for you. In my elementary school, that was kind of the specific thing. I remember like khaki, like flat front khaki shorts, super preppy, and like the $40 polo t-shirt with a color and a different color polo horse. And like we all went through that little phase. I don't do it anymore. It stuck for a little bit. It was a part of who I was. And now, and honestly, if you want to dig a little deeper into it, that was testing your own ability to create your own fashion and your own style in a way. And I think as we progress in life, at least for me, originality became a more idealistic thing for me and something that I valued, right? And like, I think it's cool to be your own person. We're all unique in our own sense. We are all different on this planet, and that is what makes us unique, and that is what value we all each individually have to bring to this world. But how do we know that without testing, retesting, and seeing what sticks, right? So that's my little example and kind of drawing the comparison there, but I want to draw that to as you grow and progress in life. And the older we get, I was actually reading in my book this morning, and I don't know how much of you are familiar, I'm reading The Defining Decade. It's all about 20-somethings, and if you're in your 20s or not, it's a great book, and it's called the Defining Decade. And it was talking this morning about your brain, and it's not fully developed until you're about 30 years old. In your 20s, that's really the biggest time to be having the biggest impact. And as I go through this book, I keep coming back to the idea that like who do you want to be? And now is the time to figure that out. But really that's over the whole course of your life. And the idea of progressing every single day that I talk about, being 1% better every single day, is so prominent. But this idea of testing and retesting is really beneficial the older that we get. And I'll use, I guess, myself as an example, but I didn't always journal. I didn't always read. I didn't always go on a barefoot walk in the morning. I didn't always get in the cold plunger, start my day off with 3 minutes of ice cold showers. I didn't always do all of these things, right? And I tested them. I would test them one at a time. All right, today I'm gonna start these cold showers. And by the way, it's the most life-changing thing I've ever done. But I would start with a hot shower, end it with 30 seconds of cold, and see how long I can bear it. I did that. It took a long time for it to build up to where now all I do is take cold showers. But my point here is not everything that I have tried has stuck. And what I have tried now has become who I am. It's a standard, it's a habit, it's a routine and discipline that I hold myself to reach my standard every single day, and then move that standard up a little higher the next day, right? And how do we get a little better? So without sounding like I'm going in a circle right here and talking about the same thing, I think it's just important my main takeaway is these things and what we test. It's important, number one, to test it, because how do you know if you can overcome something or not if you don't test it, if you don't take the risk? And number two, when you do test it, if you don't, well, now you have the confidence to say, hey, one, I have tried that, and I proved to myself that I'm capable of trying that. I've proved to myself whether I can do something or not. And your self-confidence skyrockets because you know that you are holding yourself accountable. You are doing what you say you're gonna do. You're building trust with yourself is essentially the bottom line. And this whole idea of testing and retesting, ever since we were a kid, is still gonna be there the older we get. And I think that's just, I'm kind of going in a circle now, but it's so important. If there's something that you take away, it's to try something new every day. And like for me with these cold showers or journaling, I just feel so much more mentally clear and creative and inspired to get on this camera at 7:30 in the morning. And there's so many different little things that compile, and everybody's different, right? What makes you feel good? And that is my goal. You don't have to live your life like me. If you want to, that's great, that's awesome, it's cool, and I won't take any offense to that, but this life is about you and you feeling good in your own skin. And I think that is so prominent because in the world of comparison, like in elementary school, like on social media, it's so easy to fall in that trap. And gosh, I wish there was an easy, accountable way, and there's no such thing as easy, especially when it comes to yourself, but just a way that, God, you don't have to have the 8-pack. If you're on Instagram belly rolling like me, you might need to have an 8-pack. You don't need to, but it's my business and I feel good. That's all that matters. The physical aspect comes bonus, and we're kind of going on a different rabbit hole, but I want you to feel good, and that's all that matters. I hope that's what you take away. If you're able to test, retest, and feel good by what you've tested, even if you don't succeed, that is telling in itself. Failure breeds success. And that, I think, is a good way to end this thing before we ask our random question. Let me know your thoughts in the comments too, because I love getting on there and hearing different people's perspectives, quotes that you drop in the comments. It's always super fun to see different perspectives, because again, you don't have to agree with me. A disagreement creates more conversation, and that's good. It's okay to disagree. So anyways, let's see. Random question. What did you learn? Oh my gosh, literally this is the last time. It is listening to me. The random question says, what did you learn from the last book you read? And I guess the last book I read was A Man's Search for Meaning. And I think in that book, it's about somebody who survived, Viktor Frankl, he survived the Holocaust, and his whole mindset on the entire situation. And I think my biggest takeaway from that book was the idea that suffering is necessary for humans, because your mind can literally get through anything that you put it to. If you believe in it, you have faith in it, you trust in it, it's a pretty powerful book. And he talks on that idea of suffering and how it just ties into life as a whole, and how it got him through some of the most harsh conditions a human being could ever be put in. So that is what I learned from the last book I read. I hope you took something away from this. If you did, please share it with a friend. That's the biggest way you can repay me with these YouTube podcasts. Eventually they'll be on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. One day it'll all be on there. But anyways, if you did take something away, please share. I appreciate you listening in. Have an awesome, wonderful, fantastic day, and don't forget to smile.